Women in Britain are begging Islamic scholars to release them from unhappy, even violent marriages.
I felt I should be ashamed of being there, and that how dare I have the audacity to seek a divorce, and that I was bringing shame into my culture.
These women are afraid to be identified for fear of their own community. Some have experienced domestic violence ignored by religious courts.
Even with the violence, they just totally disregarded me.
Tonight, Panorama goes undercover to investigate what's really happening in Britain's Sharia councils.
I am now really scared. I don't know whether you think I should tell the police, or anybody else.
Not the police.
And we find an Islamic judge telling a woman to ask the man abusing her if it's her fault.
This is because of my cooking, this is because I see my friends, so I can protect myself.
Okay, how can Islamic Sharia Council help you?
In this terraced house in East London, Islamic scholars grant divorces, Sharia style.
And one more question, sister.
Around 50 cases, mainly marital disputes, are heard at Leighton Sharia Council each month, 90% of them brought by women from all over the country. With an Islamic marriage, it's easier for a man to divorce. For many women in Britain, the only way is through these councils. This couple don't want to be identified.
There's, so many things between him and me. He says something else, I say something else, then we are totally different, We can't stand each other.
They've been coming here for a year. The wife wants a divorce, the husband is refusing. Their case is being heard by the most senior scholar, Dr. Suhaib Hassan.
But the main thing is, can we live together now because of all these disputes, and you are saying that he was abusing you verbally, huh?
Never ever did that. Never. Never ever. Never ever accuse, abuse, or beat, or anything. Nothing.
That's you saying.
We have an argument.
That's what I'm saying. That's you saying. That's what I'm saying. You did it. You saying I didn't do it. So obviously that's not going to be resolved.
The wife says her husband refuses to work, fails to support her, and ignores the children.
You have three kids, 9 years, 8 years, 3 years. They need a father on the...
I'm not saying that they need a father. They see him
But if
every
you are
Saturday.
separated, then what is going to happen? They can't see him regularly.
They see him every Saturday.
That is enough.
Only for 3 hours.
So you can have 6 hours. I don't mind. You can have 6 hours. When he was at home, how much time did you give them?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time sleeping, all the time drinking tea, all the time sleeping. Go to your room, don't make noise, I can't bear it. That was your time? You took them out anyway? No.
When Dr. Hassan sends the husband out, the wife breaks down and begs for a divorce.
He came to my place.
What's the point? When everything is finished, she's regretting. What's the point? I got nothing to do with him. I don't feel like anything for him.
I can't do it anymore. I hate you. मुझे सीरियल कभी नहीं देखनी अच्छी लगती. You ruined my life. मैं सोया उठा था सारा कुछ. अब ये अपने सारे गुनाह माफ करवा रहा है. काम करने के जी मैं काम कर रहा हूँ. दुनिया को दिखा रहा है कि मैं जो कहती है मैं कर रहा हूँ.
चले 1 महीना और
प्लीज नहीं देखें.
नहीं 1 महीना का मतलब ये कि आप भी दुआ करें अल्लाह से, वो भी दुआ करे, उसी में मैं कहूँगा जो अल्लाह ताला जो बेहतर हो वो अल्लाह ताला आपको मुकद्दर कर दे.
For this woman, a Sharia divorce is the only option, because the couple only had a Sharia marriage, not a British civil one.
I have listened to her now. This is why I am giving you this last just 1 month's time. Now you can leave, both of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Another month. It's been a year already, and Leighton Sharia Council still isn't granting this woman a divorce. Leighton is one of Britain's oldest and most active Islamic councils. They cannot enforce their judgments, that places like this control the lives of many Muslim women in Britain today.
We try to facilitate for the Muslim community something which they badly need, because there is no other institution which can provide such services. So we are providing it. We are not here just to issue divorces, but we want to mediate first. We try to save the marriages first. We don't want breakup of the marriages a lot. So when the people come to us, we try to reconcile them. Yes, of
But
course.
Islamic rulings given here aren't always in the interests of the women concerned and can run counter to British law. I set off round the country to find out more about Britain's Sharia councils. At King's Cross Station, I met Baroness Cox. She's introduced a private members' bill in the House of Lords to make it an offence for Sharia councils to set themselves up as courts giving judgments. We were on our way to Leeds.
If I looked at the way in which the system of Sharia courts work and the way it's believed to work by people in those communities, it is actually operating like a parallel legal system in this country. And in a democracy, you can't have two legal systems. There has to be one rule for all.
No one knows how many Sharia councils there are in Britain, in mosques and houses. One report estimates at least 85.
No, it probably wouldn't be safe. But even if you need
Baroness Cox has come to Leeds to visit Common Ivana, a charity which runs a helpline for victims of honour-based violence and forced marriage.
and with the domestic violence as well. And
A significant number of women who call complain about Sharia councils.
The provisions of many of the Sharia courts are just so discriminatory. We've heard a lot of evidence of women who are really suffering as a result of the rulings of Sharia courts, of domestic violence being condoned, differential access to divorce, issues to do with the care of children, and it is essential that something is done about it.
Sharia councils say their main concern is saving marriages through reconciliation. But in Leeds, I met a woman who had to battle with Leighton Sharia Council for 10 years, long after her marriage had broken down and her husband was back in Pakistan.
Nobody around me told me that I still needed an Islamic divorce, and that's what I firmly believe in order to move on with my life.
Farah got a civil divorce from the British courts within 6 months, but Leighton had a different approach.
They did pressure me to go back to him, even though I've shown him a civil divorce, that there's no going back from this because I haven't seen him. It must have been about 6 years at that point.
Not only did Leighton want Farah to go back to her husband, she was bringing up her young daughter alone, but she says they try to interfere in child access, which they're not allowed to do.
They still wanted a condition where I would, upon my own expenses, take her back to Pakistan and allow him to see her. And I refused to do this. And they said, if you refuse to do this, then we can't help you. And I felt extremely frustrated at that point.
A barrister specialising in family law got involved in Farah's case. Charlotte Proudman has been to many hearings at Sharia councils and is worried about what she's seen.
They're totally unregulated, unauthorised, there's no accountability, and many of them are not operating in accordance with UK law. Unfortunately, they are ruling on contact matters, residence disputes, and they certainly don't act in accordance with UK law, where the paramount importance is the child's welfare.
Leighton says it doesn't get involved with children, but Sharia rulings on such matters have featured on their website. One Islamic school of thought decrees a father can take custody of a boy from the age of 7, a girl as young as 9. When Farah refused to agree to Leighton's demand to give her husband in Pakistan access rights, she says her divorce ground to a halt.
this is definitely what delayed it, because they did say point blank, well, we can't give you this then, because you must sign this.
They're not supposed to make rulings with regard to children. Did you know that?
I didn't know that at the time. And that's why I felt really powerless to do anything.
She was held to ransom. Unless she agreed to a husband having contact with her daughter, they wouldn't issue her with a Sharia divorce, which is why the whole process took some 10 years.
When Leighton finally agreed to issue a divorce certificate, Farah decided it wasn't worth pursuing anymore. We've heard of even more worrying divorce cases handled by Leighton Sharia Council, where children and domestic violence are involved. This woman told peers at the House of Lords about her application to Leighton for a Sharia divorce.
It was an ordeal in itself, a terrible experience.
Sonia had already been granted a divorce by a UK court because of her husband's extreme violence.
He started beating me up, pulling my hair, punching me, kicking me, and then eventually he took me down the stairs. I was unconscious for I don't know how long.
Sonia's husband hit their young son too, so the British court ruled he could only have indirect contact with their children. But Leighton Sharia Council told Sonia she'd have to give the children up to him.
I couldn't bear the thought of such a violent person having my children, so this came as a major shock to me. But what was even more shocking was when I explained this to them on the phone, why he shouldn't have the access to the children. Their reaction was, well, we can't go against what Islam says.
Sonia stood her ground. Eventually, she got Leighton Sharia Council to drop their demand she give up her children.
I knew that they couldn't rule over the Queen's law, so this is why this helped me majorly to win my battle with the Sharia eventually. Almost 2 years to get my divorce. Their attitude was absolutely diabolical.
When we asked Leighton Sharia Council about Sonia and Farah's cases, they told us that with regard to children, if a marriage ends, then the question of access to both parents is crucial. Safety is paramount, they say, and any UK court order must be followed. In East London, we'd seen the public face of one of the country's main Sharia councils, serving the Muslim community. Leightons say they don't advise women who have been abused to return to their husbands. But given the experience of the two women we'd talked to, we wanted to see what advice Leighton would give a vulnerable female client. We sent an undercover reporter to consult Dr. Hassan. Her story, that her husband was hitting her, was based on ones we'd heard. The government says domestic violence is a crime which should be reported to the police.
Do you think that I should tell anybody else that I'm misbehaving? Do you think I should move their home? Because I'm scared to be in the house with him. He hits me. He just hit me. What do you mean to me? Why would you do that kind of everything hurts? The police can let you in the house. What do you suggest?
Start hitting you one thing, and of course you have to report to the police. That is not allowed.
Dr. Hassan sits on a dais above the woman, like in a court. He wonders if she's done anything to provoke this treatment.
Listen, I think you should be cautious and not to ask this question to him, but Just tell me why you are upset, huh? Is it because of my cooking? Is it because I see my friends, huh? So, I can correct myself.
Dr. Hassan suggests the woman involves her mother and brings her husband here.
I gave you my opinion that we want this person to come here. So this is how he wants to come to us. If he did not come, then how can you correct himself? The police, if he gets you, but the must understand that this will be the kind of day you have to leave the house. Where will you go? The state review, that is a very bad option. You will not have to in such places where they have to hide for a long time.
After half an hour, Dr. Hassan's made clear his view involving the police. He advises our undercover reporter to have counselling with his wife at Leighton. She has a TV show where she gives advice to Muslim women. We've covered Mrs. Hassan's face in line with her religious beliefs. Her reaction to the abuse is to wonder if the woman is at fault.
Did you, before he came, did you try to dress up and have a makeup and get ready or not?
Yeah, I do try and, be a good wife in every way to him.
But regularly you are doing before he come home. The food is ready, house is clean, and you are ready as well. You did not glow yourself.
Our reporter asks Mrs. Hassan what to do about the physical abuse.
I am now really scared. I don't know whether you think I should tell the police, or anybody else.
Not the police, but you have your in-laws. Don't think about the police, because the police is, if it's involved, then think your family life is going to break.
I don't really get my mum and dad involved because they're my family, they're my cousins.
No, but how you was thinking about the police? The family is better.
When we asked Leighton Sharia Council about what we'd filmed secretly here, they said with domestic violence it may be essential to involve the police and other authorities, but that can be a step with irrevocable consequences. We asked the Chief Crown Prosecutor for the North West to look at our secret footage. Nazir Afzal is a Muslim who has taken the national lead for the CPS in tackling honour-based and domestic violence. Mr. Afzal, what's your reaction to what you've seen here at Leighton Sharia Council?
I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised. Most of them are absolutely fine, but there was some clearly like this one who are putting women at risk. And doing so for ridiculous reasons, namely that they are somehow responsible for the abuse that they're suffering.
The government's attitude is that domestic violence is a crime, and yet they seem to be glossing over this.
Absolutely. What I've just witnessed is so dangerous, because if there is early intervention, we know that people's lives can be saved, they can be spared significant harm. Where people are deterred from seeking help and support, regrettably, many of them go on to suffer a lifetime of cruelty, significant harm.
Across the country, Manchester, Birmingham, Bradford, where there are large Muslim communities, there are now Sharia councils. Some seem to discriminate against women in different ways. They're required to produce 2 male witnesses, and it costs a woman at least £400 to get an Islamic divorce, while a man can pay nothing. Under Sharia law, a woman must hand over all her dowry before a divorce can be granted. But increasingly, women here have to rely on Sharia councils.
Many Muslim women are actually just obtaining an Islamic marriage rather than a civil marriage. They're not aware that there is a distinction. Once they have a Sharia marriage, that's not recognised under UK law, which means when it comes to divorce, they're not entitled to any rights that a married couple would be.
Having just a Sharia marriage means a man can take more than one wife because he's not married under UK law, and it puts women at a financial disadvantage.
So for example, the house, money, financial assets, they're not automatically entitled to half or even a small percentage of that.
I had come to Bristol to meet a woman, a Muslim convert, who says she was exploited because she only had a Sharia marriage.
Why did you have a British civil ceremony?
He didn't want to. He said it wasn't necessary.
Cara met her husband at university, but when her marriage broke down after several years, she was very vulnerable.
He abused me in every way possible that you can think of, like mentally, emotionally. I was completely controlled by him. He was completely obsessed with money. He made me hand over all my earnings, my student loans, my grants.
When Cara found her husband had been bringing prostitutes to their house, she ran away and was admitted to a refuge.
I explained what was happening and they confirmed that it was abuse. I was in an abusive relationship.
Cara contacted Leighton Sharia Council to get a divorce and sent them a long email detailing all the abuse she'd suffered.
There was no compassion, there was no empathy, there was absolutely nothing. It was like they were just treating me as a statistic. And then to actually ask me to pay £400 when women like me are left with nothing.
Then, Cara says, Leighton informed her she would have to come to London with her husband for the council to decide.
They were saying that we had to go and have arbitration. I thought it was shocking. I couldn't believe it. I thought, surely they can see that women are going through this, can't be forced to meet up with someone who's abusing them.
Cara refused to go to Leighton. She never got her Sharia divorce. Her husband kept the 2 houses they'd bought and gave her back far less than she'd contributed to the marriage.
If you added everything I handed over to him, it was about 80,000, but he didn't give me that in the end.
Because you only had a Sharia marriage?
Yeah, that was why he did it like that.
Where there are allegations of domestic violence, Leighton Sharia Council told us they can ensure that husband and wife do not meet during the mediation. Leighton also told us that in cases of financial hardship, their nominal fee can be reduced or dropped, and in the last 7 months, this has happened with about a third of applicants. Leighton in London is one of the main Sharia councils. But there are some in other parts of Britain which have also meddled in legal issues which should be matters for the UK courts alone. I travelled across the Pennines to Dewsbury. In an old pub here, there is now a Sharia council.
Even when I was pregnant with my first child, he used to hit me.
This woman, another victim of domestic violence, tried to get an Islamic divorce from Dewsbury Sharia Council.
I wasn't allowed to see my friends. I wasn't allowed to do anything. So I was living in constant fear.
Aisha and her children had injunctions against her husband. He'd been in prison for the violence. but Dewsbury told her she'd have to go with him for mediation.
They wanted me to go there and have a meeting with my ex face to face, and said I can't do that because he's not even allowed near my house, and because I'm frightened I can't face him.
And you had an injunction against your husband, and they still wanted you to meet with him?
Yes, they didn't take any notice.
They refuse to look at any of that documentation. They don't take any court orders in the UK seriously, which is why they mediate in situations where women are in fear of their lives and they have injunctions to prohibit their husband from coming anywhere near them.
Only when Charlotte Proudman took up Aisha's case did Dewsbury agree to see her without her husband. But Charlotte was not allowed into the hearing. Aisha faced 5 men alone without legal representation.
I wish there was a woman there. I wasn't even making eye contact, to be honest, with them. I was just looking at the floor. I didn't know these people. I know that I can't trust them because of what they did.
Aisha waited 2 years to get a Sharia divorce. Meanwhile, her husband had already moved to Pakistan and married again. Dewsbury Sharia Council told us they couldn't comment on individual cases, but they're aware of the standing and gravity of UK court orders and would never advise clients to breach them. They can arrange separate meetings on different days to avoid this.
When there's violence in the background, should they be mediating? Should they be doing this?
The best advice we give across communities, across government, is mediation is not something you should be considering in this situation. This is not a family relationship squabble. This is violence, and violence leads to more violence and leads to significant harm. This is the last thing they should be contemplating.
The previous government gave up on its attempt to investigate Sharia councils. They couldn't get proper access to them. This government's view is existing legislation already deals with the issues raised in Baroness Cox's bill.
It does appear as though it is perhaps being politically correct. It doesn't want to be deemed to be Islamophobic.
Without government support, her bill's stalled, but she isn't giving up and will retable the bill to tackle Sharia councils in the new session of Parliament.
It is a system which, in its gender discrimination causing women such suffering, is utterly incompatible with our country's values of promoting gender equality and one rule for all. It is time to draw a line in the sand and say enough is enough.
Our investigation has shown that one important Sharia council actively discourages women complaining of abuse from seeking help from the authorities.
Women from minorities are significantly less likely to report the abuse that they're suffering. We want them to realise that that's not the place to go to. Where they can go to are the women's groups that provide support and the police who can do something to ensure this doesn't happen in the future.
The women we met finally freed themselves. They want action against some Sharia councils, but not the Islamic Code itself.
They need to be held accountable, they need to be investigated, they need to be made aware of what they're doing is wrong.
It's not to do with the Sharia. I believe it's the way it's being run. The system, the way the system's being run is a sham.
I really think that they were violating the codes of Islam by treating me, because I'm a woman, in this way.
Whatever British law decrees, as long as the government allows a parallel legal system to exist in practice, there'll be other women condemned by religious councils to miserable lives. Next week, the London multi-millionaire at war with the Russian state. How one man's fight for justice has provoked a diplomatic crisis.
Next on BBC One, life on the inside and out. More compelling stories from the prisoners. On BBC Two, memories of Queen Victoria and how royal illness changed history. Or on 3, sexual health issues, testing times for young people in